Good evening. I'd like to call the Parks and Recreation Committee of Tuesday, May 21st to order. I am going to read the land acknowledgement to kick off tonight's meeting. As we gather today, I would respectfully acknowledge on behalf of Council and the community that the City of Pembroke resides on the unceded traditional territory of the Algonquin people. We thank the generations of people who have taken care of this land for thousands of years. It is with this statement that we honor and respect the Algonquins on whose land we reside. Okay, I'd like to call this meeting to order. Are there any disclosures of pecuniary interest and general nature thereof? Seeing none. Could I have a motion to approve the meeting agenda? Moved by Councillor Purcell, seconded by Councillor Plummer. All in favor? Approved. The minutes of the April 16th Parks and Recreation meeting were circulated. Are there any errors or omissions? Seeing none, could I have a motion to approve? Moved by Councillor Plummer, second by Councillor Councillor Keel. I'll give you recognition for that one. All in favor? Approved. Any business arising from those minutes? No. So we have presentations tonight. I want to welcome Mr. James Oberfrank and guest. And maybe I'll let you take it away and you can introduce to your guest.
Good evening, Madam Chair. My guest is Mariana Momsilovich. It's my spouse and my co-planner in this event. Your Worship, City Council members, City staff, hope you're all doing well. We thank you for your time and allowing us to be here today to present a proposal for an exciting event that we believe will benefit our community. With your approval, we are confident that we can make it a memorable and impactful occasion for all. So with that, we'll get started. Next slide, please. One more, please. This event aims to celebrate community spirit whilst raising funds for two local nonprofit organizations, the Robbie Dean Center, as well as Music Healing Veterans. It will also serve as a day of exposure for all downtown businesses and PBIA members with an increase in foot traffic over the day. While soliciting the downtown businesses for support, it was very well received as a great opportunity for their businesses as well as the community. What we are seeking is a Pembroke Street West closure from Alexander to Prince, the section identified in red. Access to Prince Street remains open for local traffic, deliveries, parking, access at PERVs, etc. These were some points that were presented by City Operations Department last year. We have met with Marielle and we've discussed most of these points in detail and addressed any concerns that she had at that time. What we are looking at doing is setting up vendor stands along Pembroke Street West between Alexander and Prince. The vendor spots would be reserved via a vendor fee, which would be sent for the charities. This is where we are seeking, we'll get into what we are seeking from council later. This event would also include a children activity zones. We've talked with a few vendors for things such as bouncy castles and stuff of that nature. Utilizing the extended stage that LASU has, we would build a stage out in front of LASU. All that infrastructure already exists. And we will be requesting an extended LCBO patio for that day and extending the license. As well, behind that licensed area, we would be looking to set up a food court utilizing local vendors. The PBIA would set up out in the street in front of their, what is already their home. And we would plant some restrooms and first aid stations along the way. We've reached out to St. John Ambulance to provide first aid. They just want to know once we've gotten approval, as well as we've reached out to several vendors about setting up porta potties and restrooms along the way and understand the concerns of them tipping over and things of that nature, so we'll make sure that they're dealt with appropriately. This is a tentative schedule for the day. We would see phase 1 at 9 a.m. We would have the street closed. Obviously, that would be hinging on what works best for city operations. Vendor and band set up as well. Phase 2, the vendors would open and we would start a band lineup for the day. We have a lot of local artists that would perform that day. Phase 3 would see vendor teardown in the vicinity of 7 p.m. and around 10 p.m. the stage would pivot to the inside of Lasso, at which point it would carry on in Lasso and the street would be torn down completely. By 2 a.m. the street would be open. Or by 2 a.m. The area would be eligible to be open based on city ops staff availability to remove those barriers. These are just some of the fundraising options. We are aware that the two nonprofits would be required to apply and that there is a lottery fee, which we are also looking to have waived, which we will get into on the next slide, which is what are we looking for from City Council. The first thing we are looking for is approval of the event in concept and the street closure from 9 a.m. Saturday morning until 2 p.m. or 2 a.m. Sunday morning. What works best, Madam Chair? Should I just go through all these points, or did you want to do a Q&A here? As we
You can go ahead and finish your presentation, and then I'll ask committee if they have any questions.
Okay, Madam. So the second request is a temporary patio extension for the area in front of Lasso Live is defined at there's an Annex A to this. And in accordance with the Ontario framework for temporary physical extensions, we've looked at the rules and regulations. We're just waiting on the fire department once we get approval, if we get approval, to come and give us the actual firm siting. We just haven't estimated at this time. We're also looking for a waiver of $11,000 in potential fees. Those $11,000 are based off of if every vendor came in, and we had a maximum of 28 vendors, and every one of them was a non-PBIA member and had to pay the vendor fee through the bylaws. We're also looking for a waiver of the 3% lottery license fee, and this is, again, to maximize the profits for the two nonprofit organizations. And the fifth thing we are asking City Council for is an in-kind donation of the Jersey barriers and the labor for setup and tear down of those barriers. And pending any questions, Madam Chair, that's all we have.
Thank you. Questions, comments from members of committee? Councillor Purcell, then Councillor Plummer.
Thank you very much for your presentation. Definitely a great cause in terms of, opportunity to utilize the downtown and provide some entertainment and for a good cause in terms of Robbie Dean. So my only concern is in regards to the request in regards to the costs associated with the barriers and waiving fees. It's always been a tough issue for us in regards to, when we waive fees or when we don't waive fees. But again, we still have to pay our staff in regards to the erection of the barriers and those kinds of things. And we're trying to get away from, providing, granting, fee. The removal of the fees for that purpose. That's my only concern, is that I have some concerns in regards to the fees, knowing well that I know what you're trying to do in terms of, recycle it back into for donations in regards to the charity that you're providing the services for. But I do have concerns in regards to that. Thank you.
Councillor Plummer, and then Councillor Keel.
So, first, I think it's another great use of a space. It's just a one-day event. It's not causing an entire downtown shutdown. It's only one block, which you've already laid out. There's a way to get around that, so that's good. Let's see that you've have everything laid out very neatly in your presentation, so it's very easy to follow. Thank you for that. It's right to the point. I don't have any major issues with it. I echo Councillor Purcell. There are costs associated with staff time, just to send staff out. I don't have I'll send my question over to the member on the PBIA, but I see just at a one-time event, we have a non-resident fee for your vendors and a PBIA fee, and it gets expensive really fast. So I don't really have an issue with waiving that section, because that's not costing anyone actually their time to do that. I think that's just a promotion then to help your event. Get more vendors to come down there, and the more excitement and the more people you have show up, they're going to draw more people down to that space. So that I'm certainly on board with. The only issue would be just the talking with staff and what their real-time costs are going to be for setup and tear down, and we can have that discussion further after that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mayor Jerva? Councillor Keel.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'll just go through the list of asks with respect to approval of the event and the street closure. I think we've had some negative news recently for the downtown, but I think that negative news is forgetting the great amount of popular and positive news for the downtown. So we just had the Heroes run through the downtown. Music for a Cause is going to be coming up this summer down at the marina. There's a Busker Fest coming up. I mean, when you go to a lot of smaller cities and towns, their Main Street type festivals are some of the biggest draws in those kinds of places. So I think this is an amazing event. It's for two very great causes. The temporary patio extension. I think the fact that we have Lasso Live that's able to open its windows and the possibility to extend the patio outside to play to a larger audience. I think that's something that we should be taking advantage as much as we can. With respect to the fees, this is where James and Mayor, I'm going to differ slightly. These are two great people. Both James and Mayor participated in the Veterans Concert. They participated last year in Music for a Cause. They're doing a great job for the Pembroke music scene. But even saying that, I'm going to have to say James and Mayor, which is really weird because right now I'm talking to the back of your heads. I've never supported any fee waivers since my time on council, and I'm not going to change my opinion today. With respect to the lottery licensing fee, it's only $300, but we do have a staff member that needs to issue the license, and there's work involved with that. With respect to the vendor fees, I think I would just like to hear more whether there's work involved with that or not. I might be willing to give a reduction, and that's not me changing my mind on waiving fees. It's more me wondering how $280 some per vendor, like that might make sense if somebody was wanting a chip truck or something put out as a one-off, but I would like to think that the city would see some efficiencies by us having a one-time event and all of the vendors coming at one time for one event. So I might be willing to discount those just because for a whole festival at $280 some, that's and I guess $480 some with the PBIA fee, that just personally seems a little excessive to me. And with respect to the Jersey barriers and that, I'm wondering if anyone is there from staff that could talk about whether or not we can recover some fees by scheduling. Like, I don't know if there's going to be overtime for this or if we can schedule things around that. But generally speaking, my concern is the fees. I think it's a great event, and certainly I'll be happy to support it. But I would note that with the town of Petawawa, they don't waive fees for anything for any reason, including charitable events. I think I said during budget that the city of Pembroke's not a charity, and every dollar we give away today is a dollar we don't have to spend, that we don't have to spend on something we need tomorrow. So I think we just need to be careful about that, but fair at the same time.
Thank you. Mayor Jerva?
Thank you, Madam Chair. So I want to, as was said, thank you for coming this evening and providing us with your very detailed report and certainly what you're attempting to do in terms of the charities, but also what you're trying to do for the city of Pembroke. I know that the Chair of Operations and I recently had the benefit of meeting with organizers of another event and going through logistics and concerns that from an operational point of view to ensure that OPP can get into certain locations, that the fire department can get into locations, porta potties if those are being utilized, that there's no spills, those sorts of things. My understanding is, for the benefit of the rest rest of committee. My understanding is that exactly what you've said, you've worked closely with operations, which is always helpful because trying to sometimes do things a certain way and leave staff out of it is not productive. So I do support, support and appreciate everything that you're looking to do. But as I just mentioned, we're aware of at least 2 other events that are going to happen in the downtown. My understanding from the one that we attended in terms of raising operational issues is that they're seeking sponsorships to cover off what would be their costs. And so my understanding, unless they eventually do swing around and come to us and look for something, that they're covering it themselves by way of sponsorships and debating this in wholeheartedly and trying to debate what to do with your ask. So if we say yes to yourselves, do we say yes to the next event? Do we say yes to the next event? And where does it end? It's not to take away from what you're attempting to do, and wholeheartedly I appreciate what you are doing, not only for those charities but for the city of Pembroke. So when we do get to new business, I do have concerns in terms of waiving any of the fees, because as I understand, there is real cost. This evening we're going to be talking about these crash test barriers and so forth, and it's not like someone popping up and putting up some sawhorses. It's more involved to ensure that the public is safe. So, but I do want to thank you for coming this evening and for everything that you're doing. And but there are certain challenges, as council is mentioning. Thank you.
Thank you. Just from the chair, I tend to agree with everyone. Great event. Fees, as you heard. I do look forward to hearing from staff the report on this and maybe looking at what are our true costs, what could we waive, maybe reductions in some fees, but I'm looking forward to that discussion tonight. I know that when Lasso Live first renovated, and they had that in their plan, that door could open up, and we were all pretty excited. And that's, I don't know, that must be 10, 11 years ago?
Yeah, Madam Chair, and I don't even think, talking to the owners, that it's been utilized yet.
No,
It's in the
it
basement
hasn't.
in
And I've been
storage.
waiting for them to push those doors open. So, I mean, it would be exciting. The stores down there, have they been, the residents, have they been queried on this?
So, not, the ones above Lasso was the only ones we immediately dealt with, and that area is under renovation, which actually worked to our advantage, both for noise that evening coming in from the street, as well as a potential patio extension past the door where they go upstairs, which is right attached to Lasso. So there's nobody up there right now. They're not anticipating that those renovations will be done before the 9th of September, or the 7th of September.
And the apartments, there's apartments across the street and that?
Yeah, we have not talked to any.
Okay, because I would be, wanting to give them some kind of notice if this event does go ahead.
Yeah,
but,
for sure. Yeah, that-
Okay, well, thank you very much. This is exciting, and we'll look forward to that discussion. Deputy Mayor, I forgot. How could I forget about you, Brian?
Oh, that's okay, no problem.
Thank you. Sorry.
So I sit on the board of the PBA, and the PBA supports the event, and I want to commend you for your business. I know you support a lot of charities, and you're a destination point downtown. You have great music and a bit younger crowd than myself, but nonetheless, very good. The event is well laid out, so I'm hoping when we come to discuss the fees, we can work out something. You set a precedent when you give fees, cut fees, then the other group comes along, as the mayor was mentioning. But I hope we can work out something for you, that we can do something. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your time this evening.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you.
Next on the agenda are the findings for request for expression of interest for a public-private partnership, and we have Jordan DeRoche from the Recreation Department.
All right, good evening. Recommendation for this report is for information purposes only.
Council may remember there was a special meeting that was held on December 11th. Staff were directed by Council to engage in Collier's project leaders in the development and issuance of a request for information for the existing project to gain insights on the interest in a public-private partnership. So tonight we have two experts in this field that will be joining us, and so please ask questions after the presentation. We have Andrea Finley, who's a Manager Director from Collier's Project Leaders, who will be presenting the report and findings to Council. We also have with us Sean Morley. He's partner at Faskin, who is practicing in infrastructure and public-private partnerships with experience advising procuring authorities. Sean is here at our invitation to offer general insights if need be. So I'll turn it over to Andrea, and she can report the findings. Thank you.
We have prepared a slide presentation, but I note that when we're on screen, we actually can't see the slide presentation itself. I don't know if there's a way to fix that, or alternatively, I can just say which slide we're on as I'm presenting.
Yeah, it looks like Sean's working towards that.
Okay. Great, thank you. Well, I'll get started on the assumption that we get that up and going. So in terms of the agenda, we've got about dozen slides to go through, 15 slides to go through. We're going to go through the background, methodology and approach, key findings, next steps. Oh, I can see the presentation here, Sean. In terms of the background, as Jordan mentioned, on slide number 3. On November 7th, the City Council approved the motion to issue the RFEOI to determine if there was market interest in constructing a new recreation complex by way of a P3 specifically. And when we defined what the project would be, we said that it could include an aquatic center, 2 ice surfaces, indoor soccer center, indoor basketball court, gymnasium, rock climbing, and library. It's pretty much put everything potentially on the table, and we did ask some questions around phasing, which I'll report on as well. In terms of our methodology, we were hired, as mentioned, to lead the development and manage the RFEOI process. So it's a transparent strategic step to inform the procurement process. So ultimately your RFQ and RFP that would be going out associated with this, should you choose to proceed. We developed the RFEOI document. We posted on MERX, which is the bidding system. We reported on the RFEOI results, and we are today presenting those RFEOI results to Council. So what exactly was contained in this document that was publicly available? There were 15 specific questions that were asked in 5 different categories. So based on information that we had from the city, we asked questions around procurement model. So for example, in terms of P3 project, whether it would proceed on that way. Project scope, so referring back to the different areas that I just spoke about with the project. The interest, capacity, and experience of respondents, different risks and opportunities, and different revenue opportunities as well to offset the cost associated with the project. In total, 6 responses were received, and 2 of the respondents did note that they wouldn't be providing answers, but they were interested in proceeding and having further conversations with the city. So we have summarized, when I'm referring to our comments throughout this summary presentation, the findings from the 4 respondents that provided responses. In our report, you can see that the 6 companies that did provide responses were AC Mechanical Refrigeration, Bird Construction, Capital Sports Management, Inc., EBC, Inc., Precon Construction Limited, and Plenary Americas, to give you a sense of who they were. In terms of our key findings, for the respondent interest, capacity, and experience, the great news is that all of them responded positively and that they're interested in pursuing a project with the City of Pembroke, and they expressed their desire for more information. They have demonstrated experience in this area. There are various large projects such as the Bell Sensplex, Richcraft Sensplex, different complexes that they have undertaken, ranging in value from about $25 million all the way to $520 million US. Respondents didn't identify any significant capacity issues in engaging in the project. In other words, they had the resources or the market itself, they feel that they would be in a position to support this kind of project. For the project scope, the estimate for the construction phase would be about 24 to 36 months, plus 3 to 18 months for the permitting process. So they did identify that as a potential risk. So during the planning phase of the project, should it proceed, that would be something to put some focus on. In terms of the phasing approaches, so this notion when we looked at the different parts of the project, They suggested perhaps revenue generated phasing, so those amenities that contribute the highest revenue could be prioritized. 3 to 5 year phase in with priority for the aquatic center and ice pads. And we did get a response as well of no phasing given the multiple mobilization, remobilization phases. So it gives you a sense of whether or not you should be looking at the full project or whether or not you should be, as I mentioned, phasing it in and the advantages, disadvantages for that, or their feedback rather. Procurement model. This is the big area that we were investigating and trying to get some responses from them on. The P3 model was seen as favorable. So design, build, finance, operate, and maintain model. So in such a way where you've got a fixed fee contract for the design, build, finance. They would be financing the project, and I'll get back to that lately with payments from the city. But there would also be an operating and maintaining component to that as well. So it wouldn't just be construction and walk away. They'd be talking about what they would run and what the city would be responsible for. And I'll get to those slides in a moment. All of them did reference collaboration in terms of a model. So ensuring that there is good collaboration with the city and that there's some flexibility in those contracts as well. And none agreed with the traditional procurement model, which is design, bid, build, traditional model. In terms of the well-structured DBFOM contract, so getting into more of the nitty-gritty, integrating the design, construction, finance, operating, and maintenance teams ensures the facility is designed to maximum operating efficiency. So you have that partner that would be on board for the phase of the design build, as well as through operating, maintaining. So as they're designing, they're thinking through what that's going to look like in the context of those responsibilities for this, this contract that could be about 25 years long. Having this long-term service contract also includes deduction regimes for performance failures. So that type of information needs to flow through into the RFP document as well in the contract, stating what kinds of penalties would be applied if they didn't meet any service standards associated with the facility or environmental standards, or during construction could be noise standards and expectations there as well. The other part of DBFOM is, of course, at the end of the contract, you would be getting the asset back. So making sure that within your contract documents, RFP, you've got a very clear handback regime of what the expectation is in terms of the condition of the facility, and that there would be no deferred maintenance at the end of the contract. So you have a fully operational facility without any key maintenance or that would be required, or rehabilitation. When we're taking a look at those services, as I mentioned, the suggestion was that the private partner could provide services related to mechanical systems, building fabric maintenance, janitorial, security, and groundskeeping, but that the city would maintain the highly technical or specialized tasks, such as maintaining ice surfaces, the aquatic center filtration system, or the specialized sports equipment. And please do keep in mind as we're going through this presentation, these are suggestions from the respondents, but these are all points that need to be examined to see what the city's tolerance would be and what the expectation would be. In terms of the financial details, so what we were also trying to get at was to get a sense of what the financing structure would look like, what the payment structure could potentially look like. None of the respondents necessarily disclosed financial details, which is as expected, but we always ask the question just in case we're surprised. In terms of those annual costs to the state, they didn't disclose the financial details for the annual cost to the city. However, what they did say is that they would welcome conversations, which makes sense that they would want to engage in a conversation. The key, if we look at slide 12, is that the repayment terms would include a substantial completion payment. So for this fixed price contract, there is a substantial completion payment. You could do milestone payments as well, which during the construction phase, the private partner would be responsible for financing the project themselves, going to the lender, getting all the funds, but they would be expecting these payments from the city to fund the construction of the facility, as well as monthly availability service payments. And those monthly payments over, as I mentioned, 25-year contract, let's assume 5 years construction, it's 20 years of those monthly availability payments, would cover those financing costs, operational expenses, and provide the developer with the return on equity for their investment over the life of the contract, which I am noting here could be 30 to 50 years, 25 years, depending on what it is that the city's expecting. In order to undertake this, it'd be really important, as the respondents have noted, that there is comprehensive documentation and transparency regarding the city's financial stability, creditworthiness, and commitment to fulfill its repayment obligations. So in this case, as I mentioned, the private partner is going off to their lenders in order to borrow the funds. So they need to make sure that they're in a position, and it could be in the way of that the city is in a position to make the payments associated to the construction of the facility, as well as the availability payments as outlined in the contract. They need to be clear policies and relevant information from the city regarding project scope and objectives, financing arrangements, performance requirements. Those are generally found in the RFP and the contract documents. So you would be developing those as part of the planning phase, and you'd be setting them out in those particular documents. They did raise the risk concerning regulatory compliance, the notion of risk allocation, so who's responsible for what, and dispute resolution mechanisms to mitigate potential uncertainties and risks. That's pretty much standard in terms of responses. They want to make sure that it's clear what they're responsible for. Again, that would be what would be put into the RFP and to the contract documents. So I have emphasized that there are milestone or substantial completion payments and monthly availability payments. There are ways to offset some of those costs that the city would be incurring, and those are those revenue opportunities. So we asked some questions about revenue opportunities, some ways to reduce those costs, and they would be facility rentals, programs, classes, concessions, merchandise, sponsorship advertising, special events, tournaments, partnerships, collaborations, equipment and supply shop, indoor restaurant. These are suggestions. Good thing is that there are quite a few to potentially explore to see what kind of appetite there would be in your community for these types of facilities and types of classes and sponsorship, for example. So those are revenue opportunities. And again, the city can retain the revenue risk where any revenues associated with it that flows back to the city, and it reduces your obligation to the private partner, or the revenue risk could rest with the private partner. Project risks are also identified here as well. They're going to raise these different concerns to make sure that it's built in clearly in the RFP and the contract documents. So things such as ground condition, underground utilities would be taken care of as part of geotechnical work and engineering work, examinations during the planning phase before you go out for your RFP, RFP in your contract. Approvals and permitting, similarly, as I mentioned, they are looking at 3 to 18 months. Some concerns around that, you know your process is best, but during that design phase, you'd be determining what kinds of permits would be required for the facilities. Design creep, there was some hesitancy because at this point the project scope is not as defined, so they're just making the suggestion that they be clearly defined when you've got that developed. Cost overruns, general risk, seasonal conditions, and labor shortages. In terms of the project opportunities, what they're saying here in terms of potential opportunities to the benefits, essentially, I guess, to the project, community enhancement, social inclusion, revenue generation. So there's quite a list here of benefits to the community undertaking a project such as this. They did highlight some crucial elements for success for the project. That balanced risk transfer, as I mentioned, so that to the extent that you can undertake in the planning phase, that geotechnical, the engineering, the design, understanding of what the revenue risks are going to be and who's going to be responsible for collecting those revenues and such and generating those opportunities, as to the extent that those are defined. Collaboration, effective communication, of course, very important. Understanding the financial limits, defined project objectives, and early engagement with those regulatory authorities to enhance the transparency and mitigate risks. So where do you go from here? What are the potential next steps associated with this project? What we've outlined in our report is that a key next step will be to finalize the most suitable procurement option. There is the suggestion of a P3 option, and as I mentioned, that was favorable from the people who have responded, the companies that have responded. But what's really important is that planning phase that I've been speaking about through the presentation, that clear project definition, understanding what the needs of the project are and what the project scope is. Do you need it? Do you want a library? Do you have the case for both arena and ice pads? What are the potential revenues associated with that? What are the timelines associated with that? What is the city's financial capacity in terms of cash flows associated with this? What potential funding sources are there? I know that there have been some grants that have been applied for. Depending on how you design the facility, maybe there are certain environmental grants that you could apply for, depending on the environmental standards that you would expect of the facility. What are the performance requirements? What are your hours of operation? What do you expect of the private partner in terms of the availability of these facilities, and project risks and proposed allocations? So there is quite a bit of planning to be undertaken before you get to that RFQ phase, and to the extent that you can invest the time to be able to do that, getting your engineers on board, and getting our architectural engineering team to design what it is that you're looking for, and understanding those needs and the financing. In fact, we had one of the respondents also suggested engaging a financial advisor to pull together that business case and really determine what those cash flows and long-term costs associated with the facility would be as well. Regardless of which procurement option is chosen, successful delivery of a project will require a knowledgeable, flexible, and empowered team to make quick decisions, especially under a collaborative model and that framework as well. A single point of contact who's familiar with the operations and the authority to make decisions and streamline communications, and then adequate resourcing, of course, for procurement, legal, communications, engineers, financial advisors, if you go down that route, and that strong vision to develop that project governance and the controls to effectively manage the project so that those decisions can be made quickly. You know who is responsible for what, and moving the project forward when there are issues, should they be encountered. That is the extent of the presentation that I have. Open to questions. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Yes, we do have some questions. Deputy Mayor?
Hi, Andrea. Thank you for your presentation and for Collier's expertise in helping us with our expression of interest. It was very good to see that we had 6 respondents that are in the business, and I noticed I searched out all of them, and some of them are construction companies, and some of them are in the actual operation of building and running sports plexes, like the Sensplex in Ottawa, and the Plenary Americas also is a huge company. Couple questions. This is a big step for Pembroke. We have aging infrastructure that requires millions of dollars the next 20 years, and that's why I brought the motion forward in December to look into this. Question number 1, did all the respondents mention milestone or availability payments in their submission? Or did some of them say that in the initial years there might be negative cash flow, but down the road with programming, when they do the financial model, there's a possibility of revenues supporting the payment?
Certainly, all of them did emphasize the importance associated with the possibility of revenue generation associated with this to offset the availability payments. When you're taking a look at the way that the finances would be structured, they would be responsible for financing the project up front and would have, as you mentioned, that negative cash flow, of course, because it's going out for the construction of the facility. So as you're developing the financial structure, looking at your cash flows, it'll depend on the lending rates that they have and what the expectations are of their lenders to make the repayments. And you can structure it accordingly, which is why we're also suggesting that you take a look at what those potential revenues could be to decrease the cash flow.
Yeah, so we won't really know until we have the financial modeling done by the respondent if we move forward. Like for the pool, for example, if the ice pad and the PMC replacement were built first and an AstroTurf facility to generate revenue, then the pool could be built after, because we're spending $1.1 million in the pool now to fix it. And there's different models for the pool. The city could debenture half the money for the pool, which would lower the leaseback payment from the P3 group, or the city could get a grant for some of the facility, which would lower the payment. I know North Bay just got a grant of $21 million for their facility. We haven't had much success, but I know for a regional hub, recreation hub, and more lobbying, we'd be bound. Hopefully, the government would not disregard us in, a regional recreation hub for a grant. especially with a green energy efficient facility like this, if it goes forward. The second question is the procurement modeling analysis that you're recommending, the appropriate procurement option. So that could be design build, or it could be design build, finance, operate, maintain. Is that what that modeling option does?
Exactly, and it can be narrowed down to the P3 options and the collaborative model options. As part of the analysis is the financial risks. So it would be, to your previous question as well, you could develop the financial models now to take a look at what the possibilities are, what potential revenue streams could come out based on your market base that you have in terms of City of Pembroke and surrounding areas. So you could develop that. The financial risk would be factored in the procurement model analysis as well to see what the city's capacity could be and what that would look like in terms of that risk that is retained under the different procurement models and what's possible and what's
Great.
tolerable.
Thank you, because I think the only way this is going to work is if we have a P3 firm that generates revenue to offset costs, and because we can't go out and borrow $70 million or $100 million, so that's why the P3 was introduced. Okay, that's all my questions for now. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Further questions? Yes, Mr. Unruh?
Yes, I just wanted to clarify to the two experts. So we have Andrea on, and then a lawyer that's very familiar with these types of contracts. So certainly, as Jordan was mentioning, take advantage of these two experts. But I just wanted to clarify in regards to the payment. So there's really the two stage of the payment is one in regards to the capital of it. So like if we're talking $100 million, the monthly payment would be roughly around $550,000 per year. And then on top of that would be a maintenance or a management fee, and then an availability fee. So I think we got to make sure that we're talking about all the dollars involved, and the revenue might get us some of the availability and the maintenance, but the capital cost is probably the one thing that the city would have to be responsible for. So that'd be $550,000 per month, if I'm correct. No, that's monthly.
Thank you. Further questions? Mayor?
Thank you, Madam Chair. So just to back up for a moment, and I do have a couple questions because I can say I read the report and read it again, and of concern is when I got to, I think it's page 6, and mentioning other projects, and you start Googling where these other P3s transpired, and they're larger municipalities. You're talking about Ottawa, Gatineau, Florida, someplace in Florida. In any event, but to go back for a second, and some of this is just different information so that committee has information. So initially, and it's to one of the deputy mayor's comments, is initially we were looking at building an aquatics facility, and as my understanding is that the reason why we keep getting turned down for grants is that we didn't have a design, and so we were getting ready to do that, and then we put that on pause so that we could examine this P3 concept. So that the committee is aware, at the present moment, the Ontario government has released $200 million over 3 years regarding sports and recreation facilities. There is no details yet. I am trying to get details, but until the government releases it to the people I talk to, I can't give you any other information on that. You know, and I do appreciate your report. I really do. Two takeaways I took from it, and certainly I stand to be corrected, is one, we need to know what it is that we're trying to construct. So I know that around this table we've talked about libraries, bowling alleys, and you name it. And I see it's on one of your slides listing off a whole list of different things that we could have, including rock climbing apparatuses and so forth. So I guess if one was trying to move this forward, one of the things we would need to figure out is what is it that we want in a facility, because then that will, I guess, drive what the different companies would like to do with us, and what would the cost be on that. So that was the first takeaway I got from it. The second takeaway, and I'm interested in knowing what your comments are on it, is one of the parts in the, because I really know nothing about this particular P3 concept, and that's why we did this. But one of the takeaways seemed to be in the report that we would get the building when it's, like the term of the contract, sorry, is somewhere between 30 and 50 years. And so then it begs the question, I know one of your bullets says that we're supposed to get a building that you set what the condition of it is, but even a stellarly, a building kept in a stellar fashion, are we getting a building at the conclusion of this that is 30 or 50 years old, and then what's its life expectancy left after that? So I'm curious about some input there. I will, for the benefit of the committee, say that I reached out to our comparator, which is the city of Brockville, and apparently they were examining a P3 at one point and then decided not to proceed in that fashion, and they constructed a second ice pad and attached it to what is their memorial center. So that was an interesting bit of information, but the one that it comes down to, and it's something that our CAO is commenting on, is when I get to this page 6 and I look at these other municipalities and I see the whopping project values, they did it, but they were larger municipalities, and I guess, I don't know, maybe no one, maybe you do have an answer, maybe you don't have an answer, but I'm trying to figure out whether or not a municipality of 14,000 and change is going to be able to pull off something that's, that many millions. So I'm looking, that's the main one that I have a question, because I'm really struggling with saying, okay, this is all nice, but is it pie in the sky? Do we do a design, apply for grants to fix our current facilities, and it's what we can afford? So it's that last one that I'm really struggling with. I like all these different things that are concepts, but I'm really struggling with the affordability of what's being suggested. So I don't know if you've got any input or if you got any comments in respect to Mr. CAO's comments in respect to what the cost would be, because I know when I Google Bell Sandsplex, it talks about getting some money from one source, and then it talks about a pretty whopping amount on a yearly basis that the municipality has to provide to continue to do it, and I just don't understand how we're going to do everything else as a municipality when our budget is operating maybe around 30-some million, just a little north of 30-some million. So I don't know if you've got any input to try and put my concerns at ease. I don't know.
I am familiar with the North Bay project. And as you mentioned, they had multiple different funding sources. So I think that's something that the city of Pembroke should look at, see what potential funding sources there are. There have been some applications for some grants, maybe with the Ford government's announcement of the 200 million, as you noted, they don't have any details associated with that yet. There are potential grants related to environmental sustainability as well, but that's one component. In terms of what kinds of payments there are capital payments, the substantial, we tend to call them milestone substantial completion payments, but they are to fund the capital costs associated with it. And those monthly availability costs are for the operating and maintenance as well, and to cover the long-term costs associated with capital as well that has been pushed out over the years. So there are different payments that are required, but yes, that is include capital costs and the monthly costs as well. And then it's a question of matching up what the potential sources of funds associated with that would be, whether it's the tax-based grants. I don't know much about the financial capacity of the city of Pembroke and what other sources you have that are available, but it's something you do want to look at as well.
Further questions,
Again.
comments? Sorry, Andrea, were you
Right.
going to say something? Okay.
It's fine, thank you.
Deputy Mayor?
Yeah, just one last comment. The only way this facility would work, as I said at the beginning, be a regional facility, so reported by Laurentian Valley, Bonnechere Valley. It'd be a magnet for the area community. So it's not just a Pembroke project, it could be a regional project, as we share our facilities with Laurentian Valley now. The Sandsplex in Ottawa pay, at the West End one, $350,000 performance fee to the city of Ottawa pays a $350,000 yearly performance fee, and they commit to buy so many hours of ice time and sell it back to Mount Hockey at a reduced rate. That's how they're set up. But, you know, it's like anything. We won't really know until we put the step forward and go out there and see what's available in different proposals by different P3 firms. One firm said they would use the revenue generation and in the initial and phase it in. It's to be determined still, so we don't really know about what the modeling would look like for the city and the regional partners. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Plummer?
Yeah, I think the mayor had a question there that might have not got answered, and I'll ask it again. So with the facility being turned over, I guess at the end, they're talking about a 50-year life. Is that a 50-year lifespan of the building, and there's a 25-year contract? So then we would get the facility at 25 years, and there'd still be basically half its life left, or is it a full extension of that contract for another 25 years? At what point does the city get the facility turned back to itself?
Thank you. Apologies for missing that question. You could set the term of the contract based on what your expectations are and what your commitment is in terms of those payments as well. So you can set it for 30, 50, 25 years. But the life expectancy of the asset, you could require that they hand you back an asset that is still going to be have a life expectancy beyond the term of that particular contract. I'll give you an example. The Champlain Bridge in Montreal had a 125-year life expectancy, but the contract for the Champlain Bridge construction operating maintenance was, I think, only 50 years. So you would set what your expectation is of that facility. Just keep in mind, if you're saying, I want a pristine facility that you have rehabilitated every single nut and bolt in that facility by the time that you hand it back to me, you're going to be paying for that in the rehabilitation costs as well, those monthly payments. There would be rehabilitation costs. What you've done is you've secured a contractor that knows the facility inside and out and will undertake that as part of their responsibilities under the contract.
If I can just jump in for a second, I think there's a fair bit of opportunity for creativity through these P3 contracts. So you can specify exactly in the technical requirements what the project company has to hit in terms of the handback of the building. So you have significant flexibility as to what those technical requirements say. And typically what happens is 5 years before, or periodically during the contract, a certain number of years before the expiry of the term, there are certain monitoring and reporting requirements that are triggered to make sure that they're on track to delivering the building or facilities in the state that they're contractually required to do so. And often it comes along with a reserve account. It's called a handback reserve account to make sure that they're building up sufficient funds to undertake whatever remediation or investment in turning over the facilities in the required condition.
Thank you. Further?
Is it a turf court? What other facilities are actually in this? So my question to RFP have to be to, as councilors, discuss what we really want. Would that Colliers then come back, kick it to the P3 model and see what get some hard numbers? We can have that obviously, and it could be a closed meeting because it would be a discussion of financial, and we don't want to get that out to all the competitors to know each of their own bids. But where would we go from here? I guess that's my main question.
So I'll split it into two questions, if you don't mind, in terms of what will be required in the RFP and the contract documents. I may hand that over to Sean to provide some insights on that, but I'll answer the first part of where to go from here. I would suggest that you develop an implementation plan and set out exactly what the steps would be that you need to get to. So I've highlighted, for example, an understanding of what the potential revenue sources are, what the capacity is, Pembroke surrounding areas, how many people are you talking about, what would be the potential charges. Develop a financial model associated with that, and you have that as inputs. And then take a look at what are the grant and funding opportunities, have that as an input you'd like. First step, though, is get a sense of what are all the different pieces that you need to put in place in the decisions, including what the project scope is, whether it's an arena, whether it aquatic facility with an arena, with a library. So there are a series of decisions that need to be made and a series of inputs that can be received, that you can develop so that you have those potential costs in front of you and have a sense of what this project could look like before you go out to tender, so that you have a sense of what that budget would be as well and what you would be getting. Perhaps that would be the moment where I turn it over to Sean to say, how detailed do you need to be in the RFP and then the project agreement for P3s, because that's your specialty.
Yeah, it depends, I think, and the P3 model, it evolves. There's what I'll call the traditional P3 model, where you have an RFP and you have some fairly broad requirements that are articulated in the technical requirements. And you say, we want to build, X facility. You put that out typically to 3 proponents, and you say, give us your best submission that's going to build these buildings. And it's a technical submission and it's a financial submission. The model has, and then you enter into a project agreement with the successful proponent, which is based on a fixed schedule and a fixed cost to do that particular project. There is increasing interest by market participants in doing what's called progressive P3 projects. And there, instead of going directly to the implementation agreement, which is the project agreement, you first enter into a development phase agreement with again, you put it out to RFP and you say, bidders, we're not entirely sure what we're trying to, we're not entirely sure is the scope of the project. Rather than ask you to go away and develop, your design to quite an advanced degree, we'd like to work with you collaboratively during this development phase to come up with the design. And that can involve de-scoping if the project is just too big to manage. And then at the end of that development phase process, you're left with a design. And you have an off-ramp, you can either stop there, or you can go to the implementation stage and enter into a project agreement that would be fixed price, fixed schedule for a very defined scope. Or you can take an assignment of the design and have somebody else do the implementation. But that is a model that we see increasingly used. It's often used for projects that are complex or projects that don't have crystal clear definition as to what it's going to encompass. Andrea, does that align with what you've seen in the market?
Yes, certainly in terms of the detail that would need to be put into the RFP and the project agreement, that progressive model. Just to be clear in terms of scope, when you're speaking about scope, we're not talking about, you're not sure if you want a library or an aquatic center, those kinds of things. It's more, how do you want that aquatic center to be set out? That type of the details associated with that. So what you would expect from an engineering architectural firm, as opposed to conceptual business objectives and where revenues would be generated, and the business case associated with that.
Are you satisfied with that, Councillor Plummer?
Yeah, no, it gives a little bit of direction, hopefully, this council that we need to kind of have a meeting just to actually nail down what we're actually looking for, and then we can proceed with a little more information before we get to the RFP.
Yes. Mr. Unruh?
Yeah, so I'm just trying to kind of formulate in my head in regards to the next staff report that would be coming forward. But so yeah, I agree with Councillor Plummer in regards to the scoping requirements. Just wanted to touch base on the comment made by the deputy mayor in regards to a regional, and this is not going to happen without the regional. And I know that our council has been commented in the past that we haven't involved the regional players in the scoping exercise. And so I'm wondering if that element of the process goes first, and we see if we can get our regional partners, and then we do the scoping exercise, and then, but we can, work on something like that in regards to the staff report that's come forward. But I think that's a key is that regional aspect and other stakeholders.
So if I could speak from the chair, that's part of what I have included in my implementation plan. So I know that when we were discussing a pool a few years ago, and we brought Laurentian Valley to the table, some of their concerns were heard. They didn't really know what type of facility we were building. We didn't have plans. We didn't have a scope. We didn't know how much dollars we were talking. So it was really hard for them to go back to their council and say, do we want to give them $1 million for what? So I think it's important that part of this whole plan, we involve potential partners right from the get-go. We discuss with them whether they are interested in being partners in both the payment plans we're talking about, the capital debenture or the payments to the developer, and also the ongoing maintenance. So I think we do have to schedule a meeting with the partners, have a good discussion. We know that we've been turned down in the past for grants because we didn't have a shovel-ready plan. So it's important to secure the partners first, come up with a plan, apply for some grants, and have a dollar value at least. And that's where I see this going. So I don't know how. I think once we have a plan, we could probably get a better estimate from the developer themselves. So I think that's our first step. And I thank you, Mr. Unruh, for taking the words out of my mouth. So I don't want to get too far down the road and then have them thinking we're making the decisions for them. If they decide not to participate, well, then we have a different decision. What can we afford? I do not want to be in a situation that one of our neighboring municipalities is in when it comes to cost overruns, and we're looking at, quadrupling the price that we originally thought this project was going to be. So I think we have to proceed with caution and get our neighboring municipalities to the table. Thank you. Any further comments? Councillor Purcell.
I agree with the conversations I'm hearing on the table in regards to, making sure that we're bringing in all our partners at the up front, and I do like the progressive P3 development model. Again, I'm really having a tough time in regards to understanding the process in terms of getting to the design. So, typically you hire a developer or you go out for a request for proposal for a P3 organization to help you design and scope the project. And then you provide some funding, like they'll provide some of the financial, risks associated with this particular project. But I'm just wondering, even if you go to your partners, they're going to ask, well, what are you looking at? And when you don't know what you're looking at, this is the issue. And I hear where the mayor was talking about, in terms of his concerns, what are we going to construct, and, what are the costs, and what is the life expectancy of the building, and, what's the value at the end of the term. But I think getting there, we need to work with, and issue an RFP for a contractor to work with us to come up with the design. And I like the off-ramp idea in terms of, okay, maybe the RFP just says, okay, help us get through design. And then we have an opportunity to kind of say, is this a go or a no-go? And if it's a no-go, we could park the design, or it's not feasible to proceed that way, then we can go with our own build. But we need to have that design, and I think it's important. And we need to have a costing, and we also need to understand, what we can afford. As like the mayor says, a population of 14,700 people. We aren't a big city, but that being said, this is big. This is a mega project for our area. This would be a huge development in terms of recreation, and I think we don't know what we don't know. And I think having, you know, these partners, such as these 6 organizations that responded to the expression of interest, you know, to work with them and see what they can come up with, because you know, it's like building McDonald's, right? I'm sure that there's some cost opportunities where we can recycle plans from a previous facility. You know, there's definitely opportunities that way. You know, and there's opportunities to streamline and kind of move those things forward in a meaningful manner and saving those dollars instead of, you know, creating something from scratch. So I'm kind of looking more for like a cookie cutter kind of approach as well. And I know that this is a big facility, but there are these large facilities. You can go to Ottawa and you can see some of the facilities that they have in terms of pools and rec centers and those kinds of things that were just designed in the last 4 or 5 years, built in the last 4 or 5 years. You know, let's look at those lessons learned. Let's look at, you know, those opportunities that we can kind of work with the P3 constructor and come up with something that makes sense. My fear is that we're going to continue to do market soundings and quality analysis and risk analysis and quantitative analysis, and then we're going to find out at the end, we really can't afford it. You know, so why don't we just get to the RFP, say, okay, let's go with progressive P3 development. Let's move it forward. Let's give some maybe scale down in terms of what exactly we're trying to put into that facility, and then hand it back to them and say, hey, help us with the design and see what they come back with.
Thank you, Councillor Purcell. Councillor Plummer?
Question to Andrea. So, or what? Maybe it was the other gentleman on. Was it the development phase agreement for P3 for the scoping exercise? Would that do you have any idea what an RFP or would cost the city to, you know, put something out for that project? You know, we talked about there would be an off-ramp, as Councillor Purcell mentioned, you know, to really help the city with that, kind of drilling down and figuring out what we really need here in the city of Pembroke and the area.
Sean, do you want me to start?
Yep, you go ahead, Andrew.
Yeah. Just one thing I wanted to delineate a little bit here. You can go out for an RFP right now to get an owner's engineer, is what we would generally call it. So it's an engineer or architect that I was referring to that would be on staff, that's there to represent you, to get you the design to a sufficient enough stage and support you in developing the scope. And a lot of municipalities and cities do this. And then when you are ready to develop the RFP and those documents for your actual design builder, the P3 partner, we'll call it, whether it's progressive or more traditional P3, they will help support development of all of those documents, the design technical specifications, and they would be your evaluators, your technical evaluators. So it's supplementing the engineering team of the city of Pembroke. So you can go out for that, which is a traditional contract. It's very standard contract documentation that's available to secure owner's engineer for the specific project to get you to that point. And it is smaller cost as well, see what is potentially feasible and give you an estimate of those costs before you go out for an RFQ, which, as Sean mentioned, you pre-qualify 3 companies and you evaluate them and you have them support you to bring the design to the next level, which would be to the end of the design, 100% design. So there's a hump to get to go out before you go out for that RFP in terms of design. Yeah, just suggest, Sean, did you have something to add before I see another councillor has a question?
No, I think that's right, Andrea.
I do want to just, there's a lot of planning that's required before you go out for an RFP. There's a lot of there's a lot of unknowns at this point, but they can be known. It just is going to take a little bit of work to make those decisions and figure out what exactly the scope and et cetera of the project is.
Deputy Mayor, and then I'll speak from the chair. Oh, I'm sorry, Councillor Keel. You're so small on the screen, I can hardly see you, Ian. Sorry. Go ahead.
I thought about yelling at you, but there should almost be like a little sound noise or something instead of
a little
instead
buzzer.
of just,
Yeah.
yeah. So I mean, I've now had the benefit of listening to everybody at least a couple of times. Basically, from my perspective, I think Councillor Plummer is the one that shares this with me most, is I want to get to the point where we can figure out what we're doing and how much it's going to cost, because at the end of the day, that's sort of all that matters. We pretty much know we need a new pool, and I think several councils have come to the conclusion that we need a new pool. At this point in time, the PMC is, I think, 70 or more years old. It's just going to require more and more and more fixing as we go on. PEMICE 2, I think, is over 40, approaching 50 years. So I don't want us to be left in the place we're at with the pool, which is that we wait so long to figure out what we're doing in the future that we're then getting jammed because real events are happening as we speak. And to be honest, that's how I feel the pool was dealt with, is it was left for so long that then last year we hit like critical failure point, and now we're being jammed with 1.4 million before we actually get to the point of a new pool. But how we fund this, I share the mayor's concerns that we have to know we can be able to afford this. I'm not as upbeat as the mayor sounded with respect to the province's new grant money. It's 200 million over, I think it's 3 years. That's a drop in the bucket. If the province committed to funding even half of our pool, that would be 10% of that entire funding going to the city of Pembroke alone. I mean, it's a big province, and I can only imagine that probably a majority of the municipalities are going to be looking for money out of that 200 million. So while I appreciate the province recognizing the need for recreational complexes, I'm not going to say that 200 million is putting money where their mouth is. I mean, that's a drop in the bucket for what even we know we need just here in Renfrew County, let alone the rest of the province. Things got a little bit more positive for me right at the end here. So I quickest and most efficient way to just, and I think in answer to Councillor Plummer's questions, that was that's potentially going with this hired engineer approach and the progressive design. I agree that we should consult our neighbors. I certainly don't want to be in the same boat that we were at last year when there was noise coming from some of them that we hadn't consulted with them from the beginning. But at the end of the day, in my opinion, we're going to need new recreation facilities. These things are not going to last hundreds of years. At some point, we're going to need new ones. And I just want us to be looking in the future and not getting caught at critical end stage, like, in my opinion, we have with the pool. So I'd like to see this get moving. I'd like us to get to the point where we're seeing the numbers as quickly as possible, but also as efficiently as possible. I mean, we spent quite a bit of money on this FOI report. I'm not entirely pleased by it. I'll be honest with you. Most of the information that came from this report, I had already found Googling P3s and frequently asked questions about P3s, and so I mean, it's certainly given us a base to take off from. But as far as we are with our own building and design, we're no further now than we were back in December. So I'd like to see us get moving. I'd like to see us get to a point where we're getting to the costing, because to me, that's where it's the thumbs up or the thumbs down. It's I think we're largely agreeable on the fact that the city needs to update its things, and we know we need a new pool. That current pool is basically being held together at the moment with band-aids and duct tape. Almost every year something's needed replacing in the pool for the last several years. So I would just like us to get to the point where we have a concept and we get to the money stage, because I think that's the make it or break it point.
Thank you, Councillor Keel. Deputy Mayor?
Yeah, so I'll bring forward a notice of motion during council pertaining to this item.
So if I can summarize, I think we all agree we want to know how much we're looking at. We want to involve our existing partners, Laurentian Valley, and an invitation to anyone else. We want to come up with a scope before we find out how much it is. And then this council has to decide if we move forward with a regional with partners or, you know, a smaller pool on our own. Any further comments? No. I want to thank you, Andrea and Sean, for the presentation. Do you have anything further to add, Andrea? No.
Thank you very much for your time.
Okay, thank you. Good night. Anything further from staff on that item? No.
No further comments. No.
Thank you. It's hard, yeah. Okay. Angela, Miss Lochte. So next item again is the stereotypical Street Fest staff report.
Good evening, everyone. So as we heard earlier this evening, Mr. Oberfrank was here to discuss the stereotypical Street Fest. So his request includes a number of different items. The first request relates to a road closure, which would translate into an actual road closure if approved between Alexander to Albert to allow the traffic to flow at the existing traffic signals. And as well, a number of fees were requested to be waived. So the installation, removal, and use of road barriers, it's estimated by the operations department that costs associated with this request would be in the neighborhood of $2,100 to $2,500. This cost would include labor, equipment, and any required materials. So the city does not currently have established fees for the installation, removal, and use of road barriers. However, in previous meetings, committee has expressed a desire to charge for such services for non-PBIA related events. So feedback will be required on these costs. In terms of business licensing, I do understand that there's a couple different interpretations out there related to our business licensing bylaw, but I have reviewed the bylaw very carefully, and the transient trader definition includes those who operate an event with multiple temporary vendors. So that would mean that as an event with multiple temporary vendors, only one fee would be applicable and not multiple fees. So currently, the 2024 business licensing fee for a resident operating an event would be $291.11, a non-resident of $582.23. So there would be one fee of either the resident or non-resident, and then a special events mobile food unit fee of $58.22 per mobile food unit for anybody coming in that isn't part of the PBIA already. So there is a provision in the business licensing bylaw to waive fees as it relates to in a situation where the organizer is a not-for-profit organization. However, that's not the case in this instance. The organizer is not specifically a not-for-profit organization. However, the proceeds are benefiting one, I understand. So I will say that in terms of assuming we're going to charge a resident fee, a fee of $291.11, I don't think represents the scope of work that would be required to review an event of this size, because it would have to go through a number of different departments. It would have to be looked at from a fire safety and emergency management point of view. It would have to be looked at from a zoning official plan building code point of view. So there is, quite a few different staff members, and as well the street traffic review as well. So I would say for the almost $300 fee, the costs lightly exceed the fee that's been established in this case, and I don't think our bylaw really takes into account sort of larger events very well. So I certainly think that's an improvement for the future. In terms of lottery licensing fees, as mentioned, there is a 3% fee on the maximum prize value, which we're currently estimating at $300. So to staff's knowledge, we have not waived this type of fee in the past. However, according to the AGCO, we are allowed to waive it. And again, there is considerable staff time associated with the administration of lotteries, one in terms of determining eligibility before issuing a license and then following the lottery to ensure that the funds have been distributed appropriately and that all the reporting that's required by the AGCO is received and analyzed by city staff. Finally, there are PBIA fees. Now, this is not a PBIA event, but they do support the event. So any business in the PBIA, either a food or a vendor who has paid their PBIA membership would not have to pay any additional fees. Anyone coming in from outside of the PBIA to participate in this event would be charged. A food vendor would be charged a $125 flat fee, and a vendor would be charged $25. And a request for the waiving of these fees would need to be made to the PBIA itself and to the board for decision. So the city, that does not fall within the city's purview to decide on those particular fees charged. So as discussed tonight, we need some direction on the business license for transient trader, as well as the mobile food unit fees, the lottery licensing fees, and the installation and removal of barricades. And again, this item does support the underlying principle of developing and maintaining partnerships. And I'm here to answer any questions.
Thank you, Angela. Councillor Keel, you're first up.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So I'm,
Are you still there?
sorry, okay, there we go, you're back.
Okay, try again.
I'm going to move that we approve the event in the street closure request. I'm trying to think about the patio extension because obviously it still needs approval. I think it was mentioned from the fire department and maybe the building code. So my thought was that the motion would also approve the temporary patio extension on the advice of the chief building official, and then he can consult with anyone else that he needs to consult with. Having clarification from the treasurer that it's just the one fee, and presumably be the inside of Pembroke fee, given that I think it's Lasso and Mr. Oberfrank and with the support of the PBIA, and all of them are within Pembroke. So I don't see a need to waive that singular fee. The mobile food unit fee, I think, is reasonable for the amount of business that they're going to do. And the waiver of the lottery fee, I don't think is necessary because I do believe that there's work for that. My only question, if I can, before I summarize the motion that I just made, have we charged for the barriers and stuff in the past, Madam Treasurer? Like, I know there were barriers last weekend associated with the Heroes Run and stuff like that. I'm looking to keep it even in terms of what we do with other people.
So not to date, but we understand this is something that council would like staff to take a look at in the future to ensure there's an appropriate compensation of costs that we incur for these types of events.
Okay, I don't disagree with that, but if we didn't charge last weekend for the Heroes Run, I think we as council, before we charge, we should probably, I'll wait for, yeah.
So just a point of clarification, the run is done during staff hours, however.
Okay. Well, that twists things. Okay, I'm going to move that we approve the street closure and that we approve the temporary patio extension with the advice coming from the chief building official, and I will just stop the motion there.
So we have a motion. I think everyone heard it. Do we have a seconder? Seconded by Councillor Plummer. Further discussion? Seeing no further discussion, I will call the question. All in favor? Opposed? So that motion stands. So that is the approval of the street closure and the approved temporary extension of the patio pending approval from the necessary departments, fire department, safety, that type of thing. So, any further discussion? Councillor Plummer?
I guess this is a question of staff. So what, the presentation earlier said the barricades were going to be placed, I guess, by 9 for it to begin, I believe, and it was going to be 2 a.m. They'd be removed, so that gives us, and it's on Saturday, so that's overtime for staff. Is that correct, I guess, with the, yeah, I guess a head nod on that, thank you. So that's additional cost to the city for the barricades. I know we were looking to get, this council's been very adamant about getting some sort of cost recovery, as we can't be giving everything away. Understandable that, you know, there is costs associated with running events, but there's also a ability for sponsorships to be attained by local vendors to get their name out and help sponsor events that way. So I'll continue Councillor Keel's train of thought earlier with the fees. I would move that we approve the one licensing fee for the in-town resident, the business licensing for mobile food trucks as described for $58.22 for each. Installation of recovery barricades, I'm going to use the low end for $2,100, and the 50/50 draw for $300, or the licensing fee for $300.
Okay. So we have a motion with the suggested fees. I won't repeat it all. Do we have a seconder? Deputy Mayor? Further discussion? Okay, was the motion clear? Okay, all in favor? Approved. Thank you. I believe everything has been addressed. Is there anything outstanding, Angela, that you need to? Nope. Okay, we will move. Councillor Purcell?
Just to formalize the instruction to staff and operations staff to come up with a fee structure for road closure requests, considering labor, equipment, materials, and also the consideration in terms of during regular work hours or off hours.
So those costings, sorry, I'll speak through myself, through the chair, from the chair. Those costings are not really in there, are they, for the road closure? They are? I'm sorry. Who can speak to this?
So it's more of a formal fee structure that documents the cost so that we have something a little
So you'd like to see one? Okay, so if that could be prepared. Marielle, would you like to report on that? Okay, I'm asking staff now to report on those fees.
For this closure here?
Sure.
No.
So just clarify, Councillor Purcell, is I thought it was we've got the motion for this closure. He's just looking for formal costing
Yes.
for the future, so that we're not dealing with what ifs and possibles and off hours and on hours and I think clarification in regards to what barricades are, because I think the barricades that we're talking about for this event are much different than the barricades that were done for the Heroes Run.
So this is a report to come forward later that you want to revisit? Okay, thanks, Marielle. Okay, nothing further on this item. Thank you. Next, Music for a Cause, request for municipal significance. Jordan?
All right, thank you. Recommendation for this report is that Parks and Recreation Committee designate the Music for a Cause as an event of municipal significance to satisfy the requirements of the Alcohol and Gaming Commission of Ontario of alcohol for this upcoming event that will be held in the park on July 27th. Unfortunately, the approval, however, did not meet the AGCO's criteria because they're going to be the ability to they had a caterer's license, so they had the ability to move their license to different locations. Unfortunately, that person won't be participating this year, so the Robbie Dean Centre that the event has to become of municipal significance. So I'll just turn it back to the chair, and if there's any questions, I'll be happy to answer them.
Questions on this item? Mayor?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I would move that Music, Alcohol and Gaming Commission of Ontario.
Moved by the mayor, seconded by deputy mayor. All in favor? Approved. I would imagine you were supporting that, Ian. It's just a little delay there. Okay, thank you. Yep. Now, next, user fee bylaw, May 2024. Angela?
Staff's looking for feedback from the Parks and Recreation Committee on proposed recreation rate changes for city residents for inclusion in an updated fees and charges bylaw to be presented at a future meeting of council. So over the past 2 years, city staff have, in the report presented to committee tonight, is basically an overview of each section of our fee schedule and how it's been reviewed to date. So the finance and admin section, the building fees, planning fees, operation department to other municipalities, and have something that will come back for the next year's budget to put a stronger emphasis on trying to recover some costs for that investment. So most fees are adjusted annually for CPI. I think the only exception right now in the recreation and facility area is for ball and soccer. Fees were discussed once again during budget deliberations, and particularly when we were talking about the impact of the new recreation booking software. And at that time, there was a proposal put forward to increase fees for a flat 5% for 24, 25, and 26. So at the time that we had that discussion, we didn't have a lot of information on the fees charged to the municipality itself. He has had to pay related to this new recreation booking software have been just over $6,000 and represent 3.7% of sales. So based on this recommendation, staff is recommending, with a couple of exceptions, to look at increasing our fees in addition to CPI this year by an additional amount to bring our annual fee increase to 5%, excluding ice rentals. To begin to recover that 3.7% upcharge, to look at the following year to try to recoup the balance of that 3.7% in addition to CPI, and then return back to normal CPI for 2026. There are two exceptions. One is ice rentals. Staff is looking to only increase ice rental costs by CPI just to ensure we have competitiveness with our local arenas. And the other exception, if we are going to be looking at doing CPI increases for lifeguard training, it is staff's position that when we hire lifeguards, we should reimburse the cost of their training as an incentive. And if we aren't going to do that, then we should likely leave the fees as they are, so staff available to work the pool. So aligning fees with CPI does allow us to maintain a consistent ratio of how much costs are supported by fees. And if we were to look at reimbursing instructor courses, this would impact primarily the 2025 pool training budget. So a detailed list of fees is enclosed in the schedule to this report, and it's basically comparing the staff proposal to the council flat 5% proposal. And myself and Jordan DeRoche, our director, is here to answer any questions. Thank you.
Questions? Councillor Purcell.
Thank you for your report. Yeah, I think I was the one that brought up the 5% in terms of the flat rate increases instead of CPI at budget time. I guess my concern is why does it not apply to the ice time? Because I saw that the ice time figures, based on some of the local comparators, we're still below the norm in terms of some of our competitors. I'm just wondering, why do we just keep it at CPI and not the 5% increase?
Yeah, that's a great question. Through the chair, so a couple years ago when the department brought forward the reports, they did a market study at that given time. And then since then, the CPI rates have been applied. So just as an example, last year, the 6.4% was applied to the market, or sorry, to the rates for the ice. And I mean, when you take a look at our rates, we're relatively competitive within this area. Our concern is that, you know, there's a new arena that's just down the road that has been built. And, you know, if we put ourselves too far out of the market, we could be losing revenue. Thank you.
Councillor Keel?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm going to stick with wanting to see 5% increases for the 3 years, like we said during budget. I don't remember that discussion being as tied to the transaction fees. I remember personally just thinking that we need to start charging for the use of our recreation facilities. I mean, we were looking at what is it, 11 million over the 5 or 6 years for just the 2 arenas alone. So I'm not opposed to staff coming to us saying, you know, this is how we remain competitive or whatnot. But that's, to me, just one piece of the pie. I mean, how do you remain competitive when you know, you have one neighbor, like was just said, that has a brand new arena. One of our other neighbors is closing down 2 of their arenas unless they change their changed mind further. So my understanding is Whitewater's still on track to close 2 of its 3 arenas. So you know, you might be talking apples and apples in terms of ice rink to ice rink, but each municipality's financial position is different. The age of their buildings are in different positions. So yes, I don't want us to price ourselves out of the market such that nobody's using our facilities. But at the same time, we need to start recovering money if the people in Pembroke want any facilities at all. We keep mentioning CPI, and it's been said around this, well, not this particular table where I'm located at the moment, but the table that you're sitting at. It's been pointed out before that the CPI doesn't even necessarily reflect the city's costs. That year from year, the municipalities' inflationary pressures are I want to say possibly, but I think it's safe for me to say likely more than what the CPI is. Because of course the CPI is based on a basket of household goods. Well, the city's not buying clothing and bread and milk and things like that. I mean, we're talking construction costs and specialty parts and stuff like that. So I'm not even sure when we raise things by CPI that we're actually covering real costs. And it was one councillor, not here from Pembroke, but locally, that said that way back when they were on council, they were just happy to see cost recovery in their recreation department at 50%. Well, I don't think our cost recovery is anywhere even close to 50% anymore. I think we're down closer probably to maybe 25% than 50%. So every decade that's gone by and every year further that goes by, we're actually losing. And I know none of the residents, myself included, like to see increasing fees. But the reality of the world that we live in is that costs increase. We just negotiated a couple union agreements last year. Believe it or not, they increased. The stuff that we're buying, just look at the pool. I believe, and the only one I can really see is actually your worship. I believe the pool, you were looking at 20-some million when it was first being discussed, and the latest report in the fall was that now the cost of the new pool might be as high as 40-some million. So things go up, and nobody wants to look a ratepayer in the face and say we're making it more expensive for you, but it's only because it's becoming more expensive for us. And at the moment, we're going, I think, in the wrong direction. We're not covering our costs. And that's the discussion I remember in January when we were saying that, we need to start recovering money in our recreation sector. Otherwise, without a magic influx of money from outside of the city, we're actually only digging downwards. We're not even keeping pace. So that's my concern, and that's why I would like us to stick to what we agreed to in January, which was over 3 years, some slightly higher than CPI increases, and then presumably we would go back to CPI increases after that slight adjustment. So that's where I'm going to stay.
Anyone else? Okay, I'll speak from the chair. I do support the 5%. I mean, we're always trying to play catch-up when it comes to our recreational, facilities, it seems. I mean, I know the pool isn't open right now, but to be able to go for a public swim for less than $5, you can't do anything for $5 anymore. So I think we need to keep this 5% because I think for years we didn't raise it enough, and these facilities are expensive to run. And I think that we need to, as Councillor Keel said, we need to keep this momentum up for a little while. Everything went up so much, since COVID, so I support that as well. So we need a motion here, right? So, Councillor Keel, Councillor Plummer?
What staff had mentioned, though, I do agree with it. I don't have an issue with the 5%, but where staff's making a very valid point is the charging for, or somehow reimbursing the lifeguards for their training, because it's all great to have increased fees, certainly at the pool, or I think we're going to attract, but we don't have no lifeguards on duty, then we're going to have to close the pool anyways. So I think, it does cost money. These people are essential to have the facility open. So I would support the 5% increase, but I would also want to see, as staff has indicated, the reimbursement of the fees for the training for the lifeguards.
So would you like to put that in a motion form, please?
Yes, I would move that we go with the proposed 5% increase of recreational fees with the staff recommended reimbursement of lifeguards for their instructor courses to entice employment.
Thank you. Seconded by Councillor Purcell. All in favor? Approved. Thank you very much. Further comment, Councillor Keel? No. Okay, sorry, it's delayed. Okay, thank you. Next, Christmas operating hours for Friday, December 27th. Mr. Unruh?
Yes, Madam Chair. So yeah, we're just heading into summer and we're talking about Christmas. So the staff has recommended are making a request to close city offices on Friday, December 27th, to allow all staff to have a vacation. So this would affect the City Hall, Operations Department, Fire Hall, Parks and Rec office only. It wouldn't affect operations staff, facilities, the fire department, and water and pollution control plants. So the idea is that Christmas is on Wednesday, December 25th. Boxing Day is on the Thursday, and then little work is done on the 27th in regards to people coming into the office, so there's no need. And so we're putting the recommendation forward. The management team has discussed it and agreed for this recommendation.
Deputy Mayor, then Councillor Keel.
I'll motion that we approve the recommendation to have the city offices closed on Friday, December 27th.
Motion on the floor, seconded by?
I'll second it.
Okay, Councillor Keel. Further comments? Councillor Purcell? No? I'd just like to speak from the chair. I'm reading in here that staff would be required to use a vacation day for that Friday.
Yeah, that's correct.
So in the event someone doesn't have any vacation left or hasn't earned any, they would have to sit in the parking lot, or?
Yeah, so we talked about that scenario, and that's why we're bringing it up now, because the staff has to book their holidays. So they would book it in regards to having the Friday off, so they'd save that one day for that. In the event that an individual is not, for whatever reason, have any available, we'd make the recommendation that it would be borrowed from the 2025.
Thank you. That satisfies my question. Thank you very much. And I'm going to call the question. All in favor? Approved. Thank you. Nothing further. Could I have a motion to adjourn? Moved by Deputy Mayor, seconded by Councillor Plummer. All in favor? This meeting is adjourned. Thank you.
Operation Committee Chair meeting of May 21st. I call to order. First of all, are there any disclosure of pecuniary interest? His Worship.
Mr. Chair, in respect to 6A, as I understand that Mr. Shepherd was retained in respect to that item.
Okay, noted on that. Look for approval of the meeting agenda. Moved by Councilor Frenne, second by Councilor Purcell. Those in favor? Approved. The operation minutes of March 19th. Deputy Mayor and Councilor Purcell. Those in favor? Approved. Any business arising from those minutes? Seeing none. New business as the Up A, Carmody Street Water Main Replacement, MOU with RCCDSB, Mr. Lewis, and the mayor has left the table.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The Operations Department recommends committee approve the entering into of an agreement with the Renfrew County Catholic District School Board for the replacement of water main on the school property as part of the Carmody Street Water Main Replacement Project. So the city is replacing the water main on Carmody Street from Everett Street to the Bishop Smith Catholic High School property limits. And the school also needs to replace their water main on the school board property. We have a 2024 capital budget for our portion. They're working on theirs. Both parties have retained JP2G engineering consultants. They're doing design separately for both projects and billing separately for both projects. It's recommended that we do the water main sections together as one contract, economies of scale, traffic control requirements, health and safety requirements, that kind of stuff. To complete the project within the same contract, it's been recommended to enter into an MOU. The tender and the contract documents would separate the works, so the tender would have all their items as a part of the contract. We'd have all our items as part of the contract. Those combined items, we'd work out on the percentages of the works in parts A and B. I did attach a draft MOU that we had drafted through the city solicitor, and the treasurer also reviewed that. The financial implications don't differ from the capital project that we had planned originally in the project methodology, other than we may see some economies of scale. All costs associated with design I've already mentioned. Both parties are paying their own. All costs associated with contract admin and field admin, each party would pay their own. The strategic plan impact includes partnership with stakeholders. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Questions, motions? Deputy Mayor?
Most of we accept the recommendation from committee to enter into agreement with the RCCDSB for the replacement of the water main on the school property as part of the Carmody Street Water Main Replacement Project.
Okay. Councilor Frenne, second that one. Okay. Councilor Keel?
So the school board not being low on cash, is there a reason why we're invoicing them after the fact and not asking for money up front?
Through you, Mr. Chair, we've never done a upfront payment request. We generally ask for the payment after we've received the payment certificate. So we will be billed monthly as the construction contract moves forward, and we will bill them after we've confirmed that payment certificate. So we'll get the payment certificate, we'll confirm it, we'll invoice them, we'll pay it, and then we'll get their money back. So it's not going to be at the end of the contract, it will be monthly, and we're probably going to be about 20 days behind in getting our payment after we've made ours.
Satisfy your question? Okay. All right, then, good. Got a thumbs up there. Call a question of those in favor? Approved of the memorandum of understanding. Thank you. Next item. Supply and delivery of one Septage receiving station. Request for proposal P23-11. Mr. Lewis.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The Operations Department recommends the following. Committee approve the award of supply and delivery of one Septage receiving station to Flow Point in the amount of $214,542.97 plus HST. Committee approve additional expenditures in the amount of $25,000 for contingency allowance. Total value of the recommendations equal $239,542.97. So as everyone's aware, we're establishing a dedicated bulk water and septage receiving depot on Paul Martin Drive. We've already purchased the bulk water station. This tender was to purchase the septage receiving station. It is a plug-and-play purchase package type unit. We did our normal RFP processes. We had 3 bids that were received on, 3 proposals that were received on March 21st. We reviewed, evaluated, and scored the proposals per our purchasing policy. I have included in the report the predetermined criteria that we evaluated on. The proposal that, on average, scores highest when evaluated compared to the criteria and when compared to all other proposals shall be deemed to provide the best value for the City of Pembroke. So based on that review, the committee believes the proposal from Flowpoint offers the best value for this project. Should be noted that one of the other companies, ACG, Envirocan, did not meet all the requirements as laid out in the RFP, including the supply of electrical components, installed mechanical equipment, and building size. So there was some differences in their proposals than what we needed. We would need, if we went ahead with their proposal, we would need somebody else to do that work. It would cost us roughly an additional $65,000 on their submitted price. And we'd also have issues with coordination and scheduling. Financial implications, $700,000, almost $700,000 was allocated for the depot in the 2024 budget. With the contingency allowance and the net HST, the total value of this portion of the project is $243,318.93. Remaining funds in the budget will go to the civil works. We're going to tender that in the summer of this year. And to connect this project to the strategic plan, it's the development of additional revenue streams. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Mr. Purcell?
So I move that we move forward with the supply and delivery of the Septage receiving station to Flowpoint in the amount of $214,542.97 plus HST, and that we approve $25,000 for the contingency allowance for a total of $239,542.97 plus applicable HST.
Councillor Keel?
I'll second the motion.
Okay. Further questions? Seeing none, call the question then. Those in favor? Approved. Next up is school zone safety update. Mr. Lewis.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So we have been doing a bunch of work with multiple schools, the different school boards, members of the public regarding school zone safety. This report will provide a plan that we have for additional upgrades. So for Holy Name School, so last spring we did a bunch more additional signage. We included some school zone signs, some 40-kilometer-an-hour signs on Trafalgar Road, Mary Street, Front Street. We did some stop signs in the general area. They are T intersections. T intersections do not require a stop sign, but just to help improve safety in and around the area with the school children walking, we did add those. To further enhance safety for the pedestrians at the intersection of Mary and Trafalgar, that's where we're getting the concerns being raised. We'd like to upgrade the existing crosswalk on Trafalgar Road. We'd like to use the new ladder pattern pavement markings and potentially adding some additional signage that notes pedestrians on that crosswalk. And we do that on 3 legs of the intersection. That's at Holy Name. Champlain Discovery School. In the fall of 2023, a petition was brought before committee regarding the crosswalk at the intersection of Bell and Fraser Street. Myself and other city staff met with the school board and the school. We had some discussions with them on how improvements could be made. We're planning to upgrade the crosswalks at Bell and Fraser Street, again going to the ladder pattern pavement markings, and then additional signage noting that the pedestrians are crossing at that location. So on 2 legs of the intersection, crossing Bell and then crossing Fraser again, utilizing that sidewalk. Line marking on Bell Street. So right now we have a paved shoulder that runs along the south side of Bell Street. We want to make sure that there's a nice bright white line that runs along the edge of that so people can determine what is the edge of the driving lane and don't drive on the walkable paved shoulder. We'd like to redesign the sidewalk and reconstruct the sidewalk that's on the northeast corner of Fraser and Bell, right beside our water tower. Right now it turns and comes towards traffic. We're going to try and move that so that it goes straight across, directly across Fraser Street to the other one that's on Bell Street. We have to do some work in the area, but we can
straighten that up, make it a little bit better. And for committee's information, we are still working with the school board on the potential of a student drop-off on-site at the school. Hopefully that would help reduce the congestion and the traffic issues on Bell Street. Next school is Lequinox, and staff met with representatives of the school board and with Lequinox School regarding the bus loading zone was their main concern, and then also the pedestrian traffic, the school children walking to the school. So we're planning on upgrading the existing crosswalk on Isabella Street. Crossing Isabella Street, east side of Christie Street. Again, ladder pattern pavement markings and additional signage. It is a crosswalk. The installation of a crosswalk crossing Isabella Street on the west side of Christie Street. Again, it's a crosswalk at a stop sign, and it would get the ladder pattern pavement markings and some additional signage. We're looking at the potential of installation of a level 2 type D pedestrian crossover crossing Christie Street on the north side of Isabella Street, ladder pattern style pavement markings, and the proper signage per the OTM Book 15. That would be a crossover, not a crosswalk, because it's at an uncontrolled portion of the intersection. There is no stop sign on Christie Street at that location, nor does it meet the warrants for a four-way intersection or four-way crossing. Four-way stop sign, I apologize. Upgrading of the existing crosswalk on Isabella Street at Murray Street. So we do that one in ladder pattern pavement markings as well, and some signage just to make sure everybody understands pedestrians tend to cross at that location. We'd review the no stopping and the no parking signage in and around the school to make sure that everything meets the safety requirements. And we are still working with the school. The school board has hired an engineering consultant to design a bus loading zone, a proper bus loading zone on Isabella Street at the school. And they also are looking at designing a designated student drop-off on Christie Street. So they're working on that right now. They're working with staff at the operations department to come up with the best solutions. Then that would go back to the school. At Cathedral School, so everybody understands, it is part of the Isabella Street catchment area. There is going to be some minor paving works that we do to upgrade the bus drop-off on the east side of Moffett Street between Mary and Isabella Street. So they use it as a bus loading zone, offloading zone now. It works quite well. We're just going to pave it when we go through and reconstruct that street, just so it makes it a little easier for us as well as them. At Our Lady of Lourdes, as part of the school board's work on site and their addition of another school facility, they have redone a bunch of their parking configurations on site. They have designed an on-site student drop-off, and we hope to see a huge reduction in vehicle congestion in the area, and that should help out with the pedestrian safety. So there's no other upgrades required at that location. At Highview Public School, we do have a crossover at that location to a level 2 type D pedestrian crossover per OTM Book 15. Just so everybody is aware, we're looking at all school zones to ensure that proper safety is. All of these pavement line markings is to use durable line marking. Durable line marking has an approximate lifespan of 3 to 5 years. Reports we're getting and pictures we're receiving from places that have durable line marking in place is they're getting 5 years out of the durable line marking. It basically melts it down into the asphalt and it stays there for 3 to 5 years. So you have that constant, nice white delineation, not getting wore off like our paint does. Some costs for a typical ladder pattern crosswalk using durable line markings, about $1,200. We can do it for about $330 using latex paint. Using latex paint, we have to do it every year. If we get 5 years out of durable line marking, we have a potential return on investment of about $450 per crosswalk. I did make a recent presentation at the Police Services Board regarding all the planned upgrades, and they were in concurrence with the plan. So the upgrade to durable line markings will cost in the magnitude of $20,000. The installation of all the signage that I talked about, $10,000 to $15,000. So we did have a great winter so far this year. First 4 months of this year, as far as winter was concerned, was great. We definitely have some savings. The minimum amount of savings that I've projected at this point is $94,000. I've done some further analysis of the winter control budget since I wrote this report. Spent quite a bit of time looking at it several different directions to make sure that we were on the right track. And even if I account for the worst fall in the last 5 years, account for that coming up for October, November, and December, and the most amount of material that we've ever put out, the budget surplus is still $98,000. If we use the median over the last 5 years, budget surplus anticipated at $118,000 to $250,000. So I would recommend we fund the school zone upgrades I've listed in the report through the surplus, and per the procurement policy, it can be funded without having to adjust budgets. It will just ride through O&M.
You got Deputy Mayor up first.
So I just want to commend Mr. Lewis and staff for this detailed report on the safety of the students. I had some people ask me at the Community Expo what the status was of Champlain Discovery, and lo and behold, I read the council agenda last Friday and you've got a full report. So I just want to commend you and staff. Do you need a motion for the for a budget to come out of? No, eh?
No, I have the authority through the procurement
Okay.
policy to use the surplus
Thank you.
in the
So,
O&M.
great work.
Councillor Lafreniere?
Yes, I want to thank Brian very much. This presentation, like he said, was given through the Police Services Board for their opinions. And I know last election I heard a lot from parents of children that have to walk to school. So I'm really happy to see the part of this report that is that they're still looking at all the school zones surrounding each of the schools to assess, for proper signage and pavement markings. So this is an ongoing process that we're going through. So I was really happy to hear about that, because keeping our young ones safe when they're walking to school is of the utmost importance to all of us around the table. So thank you, Brian, and continue the good work. Thank you.
Councillor Keel?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Brian, so one of the biggest things that you probably heard, because it's what I heard, is that when it comes to Champlain, there's just so many vehicles and so much congestion. There's a lot going on. You're trying to look all over the place and whatnot. And one of the residents challenged me to sort of drive through there one morning, and one of the things that I noticed was they were completely right about one thing. Although it's a 4-way stop, I knew there was a stop sign there, but for the fact that there was some larger vehicles, I guess on the so I was driving from east to west, and there were a number of vehicles lined up on the side of the road, I guess the water tower side of the road. I know there's a stop sign there. I'm not sure that everybody would notice the stop sign with the amount that's going on, and you're paying attention to the road, you're paying attention to the side of the roads. So I love your report. I think this is all fantastic. My only question, as an additional question, is there a way to make the stop signs taller? I don't know what regulations are. Have you considered any of the stop signs with maybe the flashing lights, which coincidentally enough, the city I'm in right now seems to love those? Is there something that we could do to make the fact that it's a 4-way stop more in your face if you're driving through that unfortunately very busy area? But other than I certainly hope you don't take that as a criticism, because I think this report was absolutely fantastic, and I'm so glad that you looked at all of the various school zones. I'm just not sure that the stop sign issue was addressed. So if you could possibly speak to that one, Brian.
Through you, Mr. Chair. We did look at the stop sign. It is an all-way stop. So a couple of things we looked at was making them larger. If we make them larger, it may cause issues with the pedestrians on the sidewalk and then the vehicles being close, especially with a right-hand turn onto Fraser Street. It may cause some issues. I don't think we're at the point now where we need to look at flashing lights on the stop signs. With the upgraded stop blocks, which is the stop bar, with the upgraded crosswalk, it's going to be in your face now on the pavement that you're coming to a stop condition at the intersection, which helps. And I think working with the school to try and get the traffic that you, Councillor Keel, that you mentioned on Bell Street onto their site and off the sides of the road is going to alleviate some of that problem. So I would suggest we do the upgrades we're planning, and we'll monitor for a bit and see if we've helped with the problem, and if it needs anything further.
I'm fine with that. Thanks, Brian.
His worship?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just want to echo what all the council members have said in terms of the great report, but for the purposes of council, so that you understand how you got such a great report, is that Mr. Lewis takes the initiative to attend a number of different education courses and so forth to ensure that he is up on all of this and he is able to provide you with this report. And then by having such a great resource on staff, you don't have to hire consultants to generate these kinds of reports.
Any other questions to Mr. Lewis? Seeing none, thank you very much for that report. Look forward to the upgrades. Next up is the Rotary Park area safety.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So very similar to the school zone safety, we had some concerns in and around Rotary Park. Some concerns were brought to our attention. So I have, myself and staff, we've been working for several months to do some analysis and look at the traffic and the traffic management in and around Rotary Park. As His Worship has mentioned, a lot of the TAC courses and the Ontario Traffic Manual courses and the road safety audit courses have helped me build this report and do a lot of review in and around that area. So as I mentioned, between September 23 and April 24, we had our speed display signs out. We had them out all the way around Rotary Park. We collected a huge amount of data, including vehicle speed, numbers of vehicles, the direction they were coming from, and so forth. I also analyzed the 2015 traffic count study and data from 2023 that's part of the ongoing transportation master plan. I have done a report to the Police Services Board on Rotary Park as well, and went through a number of suggestions that were brought to our attention, including a all-way intersection at James and Isabella Street, and speed humps and automated speed enforcement. A number of things. I went through all the warrants in various different manuals, did a bunch of analysis, and what my recommendation is to help address concerns related to pedestrian safety and the kids' safety in and around Rotary Park is to install, excuse me, playground area signage, and that will designate that area as a playground. And I don't have a copy in front of me, but I believe attached to the report was the bright yellow sign that shows what the playground sign looks like. It's a WC3, and we put it on all 3 streets surrounding. As I mentioned, I was in front of the Police Services Board with this report, and they also recommended doing the same. And the excuse me, the Police Services Board also recommended monitoring the speed in the same locations over the summer months. As you note, my analysis was done through the school year, because one of the concerns was raised was the children walking to and from school that just happened to be going by the park. I'd like to do another analysis with the speed display signs come summer when there's lots of use of the park itself. So the installation of the signage to designate this playground is in the magnitude of $4,700. Again, winter control budget, and that's where I'd like to use that money. And I truly believe this will help enhance the safety in and around the park.
Questions? Deputy Mayor?
Motion to accept the recommendation to install the signage.
Seconder? Councillor Frenier? Further questions or comments? Seeing none, pose question. Those in favor? Approved. Last item for the night, hard traffic control barriers. Mr. Lewis.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. the Operations Department recommends committee approve the use of winter control cost savings for the purchase of traffic control barriers and traffic control related items. So there's been a number of different reports brought forward, a lot of different discussions regarding hard barricades, and I'll designate between hard barricades and soft barricades. Hard barricade is something that a vehicle is going to have some a very tough time trying to get through, if they could get through at all. A soft barricade is the orange sawhorses that you see that we typically use. So again, with a number of courses and so forth that I've been doing over the last 3 years, the use of hard barricades for traffic control is becoming more and more popular is not the right word, but more in demand, especially with some of the events that we're talking about. I'll try and get through the report fairly quickly. The busker event that we're talking about, the stereotypical event that we're talking about, you're going to have a large amount of people congregating in one spot on Pembroke Street with a lot of traffic coming at you from the west and the east. If you have an errant vehicle, it's not 1 or 2 pedestrians that are going to get hit. It's a very, very large group of people. Hard barricades are going to help protect those users on the street through those. The sawhorses are not. The sawhorses help to detour traffic for those that will accept the detour. They also are easy to move if somebody's frustrated and wants to continue down the street. They're just going to get out of their vehicle, move the sawhorse, and keep going. You're not doing that with one of these hard barricades. It's not going to happen. So I'm suggesting, again, we use winter control budget savings to purchase a number of hard barricades. I mentioned about the downtown events. If we have a construction project, we're doing a trench, it happens to be very, very close to the traffic lane, and we can't divert traffic, concrete jersey barriers get placed along that excavation so an errant vehicle can't hurt our workers or fall into the trench. We don't want a car going into the trench. So we use concrete jersey barriers for those. We also use concrete jersey barriers for our city facilities and to protect our own infrastructure. At Town Line right now, we have 3 around our large generator with the construction project happening there, so nobody backs into our generator, which is a lot of money. The other thing is the on-street patios. So at present, some of the on-street patios, we use, I believe it's a 3 foot by 2 foot, 2 foot high concrete block. In a low volume road with low speeds, all that kind of stuff, it works well. And if we have the ability, depending on where that patio is, for that width, then they work great. Some of the other locations may not necessarily have the width. I'm referring specifically to the new location on Agnes Street. When that patio is put in place, the width between the edge of the patio and the driving lane is going to be smaller than some of the other locations. And the need for a buffer is becoming bigger on on-street patios. The easiest way to understand is that's the railing of the on-street patio, and I'm sitting at the edge of the railing and I got my arm up here having a conversation. My arm is now in the driving lane. So we want to protect people that are using these patios. So I also have a suggestion in the report to purchase some urban barriers is what they're called. Kind of looks like a fence. The bottom of it is very, very heavy, and they're narrower, so it doesn't take up as much space, and we can use them in some of these locations. So I'm recommending 16 fillable crash-tested barriers. It looks like a jersey barrier. It's plastic. It's orange and white. We fill it up with water, and it becomes the same thing as a concrete jersey barrier. They're easier for us to store, easier for us to move around, and if the fire department really had to get into a location we had blocked off, they're getting through one of these with one of those big trucks a little easier than a concrete jersey barrier. I mentioned the reason for concrete jersey barriers. I'm recommending we purchase 8 of those, 5 to 6 of the large decorative concrete retaining wall stones, and 9 of the urban barriers where we have limited space. So the department, we will continue to do pricing. The pricing we have right now, we only have one supplier. We're reaching out to others to try and get more competitive pricing. So we need to do that, and we need to just confirm numbers Do we need 16 or do we need 14? So we'll do that. The anticipated needs, maximum value of 47,500. And if we add up the numbers that I was talking about in the last 3 reports, we're still under the 94. I think we're around $89,000 of the surplus being used.
Councillor Purcell?
Thanks, Brian. So I recommend that the committee approve the use of the winter control cost savings to purchase the control barriers and traffic control related items. Having a parking lot in my backyard, the Jersey barrier actually prevented vehicles from actually entering my backyard on 2 separate occasions. Twice before, they're actually in my backyard from the hospital, from individuals leaning over to actually grab the ticket out of the actual ticket booth and drove straight through the fence into the backyard on 2 occasions. So I'm a big believer in terms of the use of those hard barriers to defer the traffic and protect pedestrians. So good job.
Deputy Mayor?
I'll second the motion.
Okay, so any further questions or comments? Seeing, Councillor Keel?
Just in addition, piggybacking on what Councillor Purcell was asking for earlier in the night with a costing, Brian, I'm just wondering if perhaps not even remotely necessary for the immediate time being, but that the next time you update your fees or whatnot, that we look at some of these specific issues for costings, so that I'm glad to hear that some of these barriers are going to be nice and easy to move and those kinds of things. But if we could have specific costings, especially for people looking to plan events or whatnot, so that they would know what they would be in for, I think it would be good to be able to give them some idea.
Through the chair, yes, I plan on doing that. I expect I'll be back in front of committee in June or July with an update on user fees. We purchase our inventory in through the spring. We need to have our inventory in an invoice before we can set our user fees, because we do work on a cost plus or cost recovery basis. So we need those, and I intend to bring user fees for the rental of these items at the same time.
Okay, so we do have a motion on the floor and a second, so seeing no other further questions or comments, call the question. Those in favor? Approved. Motion to adjourn. Deputy Mayor and Councillor Purcell, those in favor? We are adjourned. Thank you, everyone.
Good evening, everyone. I'd like to call this council meeting to order for May 21st. I would ask everyone to please take a moment and please stand for an opening prayer and/or reflection. Before opening this meeting of council, I would ask those who wish, each in your own way, silently join in a prayer of guidance over these proceedings. Thank you. Are there any disclosures of pecuniary interest? I will be and am declaring in respect to 6B and C, and we'll be calling upon the deputy mayor when we get to those to take the chair. Approval of minutes from council meetings. We have a special council meeting of May 7th, 2024. I'd entertain a motion for the approval of those minutes. I have Councillor Plummer, seconded by Councillor Purcell. Those in favor? That is carried. Next is regular meeting of council, May 7th, 2024. I have a motion by Councillor Plummer, seconded by Councillor Lafreniere. Those in favor? There we go, carried. Adoption of minutes from committee meetings. First up is Parks and Recreation Committee, April 16th, 2024. Having been circulated, moved by Councillor Keel, seconded by Councillor Lafreniere. Those in favor? That is carried. Next is adopting minutes from the Operations Committee meeting of March 19th, 2024. I have Councillor Plummer, seconded by Councillor Purcell. Those in favor? That is carried. Then we're receiving minutes from local boards. We have two this evening. First up is Ottawa Valley Waste Recovery Board, March 7th, 2024. I have a motion by Councillor Plummer, seconded by the Deputy Mayor. Those in favor? That is carried. And last but not least, in terms of receiving minutes, is Pembroke Heritage Murals, May 1st, 2024 meeting. I have a motion by Councillor Lafreniere, second by Councillor Purcell. Those in favor? That is carried. Thank you. Next. Under proclamations. I do hereby declare May 26th to June 1st, 2024 as National Accessibility Week in the city of Pembroke. Whereas National Accessibility Week was established in 1987 following Rick Hansen's 40,000-kilometer Man of Motion tour, and whereas National Accessibility Week is an opportunity to celebrate the valuable contributions of Canadians with disabilities and to recognize the efforts of individuals, communities, and workplaces that are actively working to remove barriers to accessibility and inclusion. And whereas 1 in 5 working-age Canadians have at least one disability, many persons living with disabilities facing barriers in the areas of employment, information and technology, transportation, housing, education, and recreation. And whereas we all benefit from a society and an economy without barriers to inclusion, when persons with disabilities can participate in all aspects of society, including accessing employment, resources, and services, it enriches Canada's economy. And whereas the City of Pembroke is committed to accessibility, therefore, be it resolved that I, Ron Jerva, Mayor of the City of Pembroke, do hereby proclaim May 26th through to June 1st as National Accessibility Week in the City of Pembroke. National Accessibility Week is a week to value the contributions and leadership of persons with disabilities in Canada, the work of allies, organizations, and communities that are removing barriers, and our ongoing effort to become a more accessible and inclusive Canada. This year, the theme of National Accessibility Week is Disability Inclusion from Possibilities to Practice. Our country's strength lies in its diversity of its people, all people, and we can and should contribute to this concept and this ideal. Okay, next we're moving on to bylaws. I understand, Deputy Mayor, you have bylaw 2024-33, encroachment agreement with the PBIA and outdoor patios.
Yeah, thank you, Your Worship. Moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Andrew Plummer, that bylaw 2024-33, a bylaw to authorize the entry into an encroachment agreement between the Pembroke Business Improvement Area, PBIA, and the Corporation of the City of Pembroke be adopted and passed, and further, that the said bylaw be signed by the Mayor and Clerk and sealed with the seal of the Corporation.
By the Deputy Mayor, seconded by Councillor Plummer, that bylaw 2024-33, a bylaw to authorize the entering into of an encroachment agreement between the Pembroke Business Improvement Area and the Corporation of the City of Pembroke be adopted and passed, and further that the said bylaw be signed by the Mayor and Clerk and sealed with the seal of the Corporation. Deputy Mayor?
Your worship, this was presented at a council meeting for the PMA to move a patio on the west side of Agnes Street and to permit a directional A-frame sign at the corner of Agnes and Pembroke Street West, so the local eateries and the customers will have access to that patio. Thank you.
Thank you. Call the question. Those in favor? And that is carried. Okay. B and Z is yours.
Be it noted that the mayor has left the table as he declared a pecuniary conflict on B and C. Bylaw 2024-34, official plan amendment number 22. Councillor Lafreniere.
Yes, moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Troy Purcell, the bylaw 2024-34, a bylaw to authorize the adoption of amendment number 22 to the official plan 2016 of the City of Pembroke planning area be adopted and passed, and further that said bylaw be signed by the mayor and clerk and sealed with the seal of the corporation.
Thank you. Moved by Councillor Pat Lafreniere, seconded by Councillor Troy Purcell, that bylaw 2024-34, a bylaw to authorize the adoption of amendment number 22 to the official plan 2016 of the City of Pembroke planning area be adopted and passed, and further that said bylaw be signed by the mayor and clerk and sealed with the seal of the corporation. Councillor Lafreniere.
Yes, this speaks to a development in the west end of Pembroke, LaPointe Holdings, and it is basically just some transferring of lands over and some bylaws that have to be amended to create residential.
Okay, those in favor? Carried. Bylaw 2024-35, rezoning, 29 Eddie Crescent. Councillor Lafreniere.
Yes, moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Troy Purcell, that bylaw 2024-35, a bylaw to amend bylaw 2020-05 of the Corporation of the City of Pembroke, being a bylaw to regulate the use of lands and the character, location, and use of buildings and structures in the City of Pembroke be adopted and passed, and further that the said bylaw be signed by the mayor and clerk and sealed with the seal of the corporation.
Moved by Councillor Pat Lafreniere and seconded by Councillor Troy Purcell, so the different signature. That bylaw 2024-35, a bylaw to amend bylaw 2020-05 of the Corporation of the City of Pembroke, being a bylaw to regulate the use of lands and the character, location, and use of buildings and structures in the City of Pembroke be adopted and passed, and further, that said bylaw be signed by the Deputy Mayor and Clerk and sealed with the seal of the corporation. Those in favor? Carried. Comments, Councillor Lafreniere?
Yes, this is basically related to the previous bylaw, and it is that the planning department was recommending the redesignation of Lot 46 in this development to residential and a zoning bylaw amendment to residential type 2 R2. So it just simply, again, allows the transfer of one more lot. Thank you.
The mayor will return to the chair.
Next up is 2024-36, rezoning 331 Boundary Road. Councillor Purcell.
Thank you, Worship. Moved by myself and seconded by Councillor Lafreniere, and that bylaw 2024-36, a bylaw to amend bylaw 2020-05 of the Corporation of the City of Pembroke, being a bylaw to regulate the use of lands and the character, location, use of buildings and structures in the City of Pembroke be adopted and passed, and further that said bylaw be signed by the mayor and clerk and sealed with the seal of the corporation. Thank you.
Moved by Councillor Purcell, seconded by Councillor Lafreniere, that bylaw 2024-36, a bylaw to amend bylaw 2020-05 of the corporation of the city of Pembroke, being a bylaw to regulate the use of lands and the character, location, and use of buildings and structures in the city of Pembroke, be adopted and passed, and further that said bylaw be signed by the mayor and clerk and sealed with the seal of the corporation. Councillor Purcell?
Thank you, Your Worship. It's just a zoning bylaw amendment application that was received for 331 Boundary Road, and it's changing it from open space to general industrial. So it's meeting the zoning bylaw official plan and the provincial policy statement in terms of the use of the land.
Thank you, Councillor Purcell. Those in favor? That is carried. Thank you. Next is 2024-37 Matheson Drive, stop up and close. Councillor Plummer.
Thank you, Your Worship. Moved by myself, seconded by the Deputy Mayor, that bylaw 2024-37, a bylaw to provide the severance, transfer, and stop-up of a 0.31 meter portion of the end of Matheson Drive in the city of Pembroke be adopted and passed, and further said be signed by the mayor and clerk and sealed with the seal of the corporation.
Moved by Councillor Plummer, seconded by the Deputy Mayor, that bylaw 2024-37, a bylaw to provide for the severance, transfer, and stopping up of a 0.31 meter portion at the end of Matheson Drive in the city of Pembroke be adopted and passed, and further that said bylaw be signed by the mayor and clerk and sealed with the seal of the corporation. Councillor Plummer.
Thank you, Your Worship. This is to create a 1 foot reserve and a stop up and close a portion of Matheson Drive. This is a previous report to establish a 1 foot reserve as well as stopping up and closing of the 1 foot portion of Matheson Drive for the purpose of restricting access into and from adjacent township of Laurentian Valley proposed subdivision until such time the city of Pembroke provides its approval. There is a planned subdivision on our border with consisting of 156 residential units. There was discussions before about accessing Matheson Drive. That is now not proceeding at this time. The subdivision is proceeding, but not the access through Matheson. So this gives us the city of Pembroke the reserve. So if any other future developments are planned or future access is planned by the developer, it has to come back to this council for approval from the city of Pembroke. They will be accessing at O'Brien to access Angus Campbell. Thank you.
Thank you. Call the question. Those in favor? That is carried. Thank you. Deputy Mayor, I believe you have the next one, 2024-38, council remuneration.
No, thank you, Your Worship. Moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Andrew Plummer, that bylaw 2024-38, a bylaw to adopt the council remuneration and expense policy for the corporation of the city of Pembroke be adopted and passed, and further that said bylaw be signed by the mayor and clerk and sealed with the seal of the corporation.
Moved by the Deputy Mayor, seconded by Councillor Plummer, that bylaw 2024-38, a bylaw to adopt the council remuneration and expense policy of the corporation of the city of Pembroke be adopted and passed, and further that the said bylaw be signed by the mayor and clerk and sealed with the seal of the corporation. Deputy Mayor.
This was presented at a previous meeting by our treasurer and adopted by committee, and it's just approval of the bylaws tonight.
Thank you. Call the question. Those in favor? And that is carried. Thank you. Mayor's report. So good evening, everyone. I wish to bring forward my mayor's report at this time. On May 8th, I had the pleasure to attend our local McDonald's for McHappy Day. This was a great opportunity to meet with the owner, general manager, and all of the great staff working there. McDonald's Pembroke employs a significant number of people, I learned, and that the feeling from the employees is that it's a great place to work. The funds raised this year goes to Ronald McDonald House as they are expanding that facility for staying at CHIO when individuals are there. I can say that it was a very worthwhile conversation with the individuals there, in particular the owner and general manager, and certainly gave an insight in terms of the individuals that they employ in our community, and a number of them being college students. And again, I continue to say that we're so blessed to have Algonquin College in our community. On May 11th, I had the pleasure to attend the 100th birthday party for Hazel Dupuis. It was sincerely a pleasure to meet someone so full of life who acknowledged all of her friends and family and had a gathering to celebrate 100 years. I can only wish. And to be so full of life at 100, and it was just a phenomenal opportunity. On May 11th, I had the pleasure to open up the Farmers Market together with the Deputy Mayor. I encourage everyone to attend the market and support the various vendors, buy nutritious items, and support local. I wish to extend a sincere thank you to all the council members, staff members, and public who made the Pembroke Expo a truly great experience this year. It was very well attended, and it was an excellent opportunity to speak with many members of the public and showcase all that the area has to offer. Certainly, I know that each and every one of us are always approachable, but certainly when you attend functions like this, public can ultimately engage in conversation with them. As always, stay safe and be kind to one another. Are there any notices of motion? Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Your Worship. One plot left. If anyone would like it, they can contact the mayor or myself. We have some new members this year, and a couple stakeholders have taken an extra garden plot, and we have 4 garden beds for the community garden and then the big land garden. So we're looking forward to another great year. Our fundraising campaign ends Friday for the rain barrels. We've sold around 90. We needed 75 are prepaid, so we're well on our way. And so make sure you go to the website, rainbarrel.ca, look for Pembroke, and maybe you'll consider buying a rain barrel. Community Expo, we want to thank the volunteers at the community garden booth and the police services, the community watch booth also, and the police services board. And good news, working with the skateboard community, and thanks to Mr. DeRoche, Director of Parks and Rec, we were able to have 4 hydro poles donated by an anonymous donor. We were able to have Ottawa River Power Corporation, who are going to pick up the poles and install them. And thank you to the Chair of Recreation and Vice Chair for a great budget. So we have a line item in the budget. We're installing 4 solar lights. They're not very expensive, and they will be off at 10 o'clock. It's been proven in urban areas when you have lighting in a skateboard park, you decrease vandalism and loitering. And one of the reasons the donor has donated the poles is because they drove by and they were impressed by the number of females skateboarding and families. So we want to thank the City of Pembroke, Ottawa River Power Corporation, the anonymous donor, and Tanner Hogan and Brandon Peterson at the skateboard shop, and Jordan DeRoche. And it's a real example of community partnership coming together for this. June 21st, they're going to have a official opening at nighttime with a function. It's National or International Skateboarding Day. So we invite everybody down. There'll be more details on that. Just a reminder on behalf of Councillor Purcell and I, who sit on the library board, the Multicultural Festival is Friday, July 19th, 4 till 8, and Saturday, the 20th, from 12 till 8 at the Waterfront Park. We're still looking for sponsors. And embrace it, feel it, celebrate it. And we want to commend Kathy Rajamani and the staff of the library who, do a phenomenal role in this, and we're looking for an even bigger festival this year. Thank you, Your Worship.
Thank you. Any other Councillor Purcell?
Thank you, Mayor. On May 11th, I had the pleasure of attending the annual Veterans Appreciation Dinner. To my surprise, the guest speaker was a commander of my nephew that was killed in Afghanistan. So it was, my niece was there, and it was really interesting to get his perspective in terms of the sacrifices that these young men and women and veterans from there's one veteran from World War II, veterans from the Korean War. My father was also a veteran from the Korean War as well. So it was a pleasure to be part of that recognition of the veterans and appreciation for all that they do. And a special thank you goes out to the Royal Canadian Legion Branch 72 for their hospitality. So it was just a great event, and it was well attended, and a lot of great conversation by everyone. So thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Confirming bylaw, Councillor Plummer.
Thank you. Worship of myself, secondly the Deputy Mayor, that bylaw 14-24 to confirm the proceedings of the regular meeting of council of May 21st, 2024 be adopted and passed. And third, said bylaw be signed by the mayor and clerk and sealed with the seal of the corporation.
Thank you. Moved by Councillor Plummer, seconded by the Deputy Mayor, that bylaw 14-2024 to confirm the proceedings of the regular meeting of council, May 21, 2024, be adopted and passed, and further that said bylaw be signed by the mayor and clerk and sealed with the seal of the corporation. Those in favor? That is carried. A motion to adjourn. I have Councillor Keel, seconded by the Deputy Mayor. Those in favor? We are adjourned. Thank you.